Well, good day and welcome to you. It is October the 28th, and I hope you're having a great day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. Now, whether you have heard these videos before or you're totally new to this information, if you want to know more about it, definitely check out the links that I provided in the description portion of this video. I do recommend going to the Share International website first, especially if you don't know anything about this information, because there you can actually get pretty much all the information you will need to educate yourself better about this information, know more about it, even see if it's true for yourself or not. And then the other links that I provided can add to it, but if you were to go to some of the other links first and not the Share International, especially if you didn't know anything about this, that you wouldn't get as much of a background information about it as you could. It'd be a lot harder to, I think, get to it. And then also, too, if you see that there's no truth to any of this, I don't know if those other links would really be of value to, but, they might, I guess. So it's up to you, whatever you want to do. Now, in the last video, I did what I do a lot, and I read an article that Benjamin Creme's master wrote in Share International. And this article was entitled Man's Divinity, and it was written in September of 2007. Now, the thing about this article, when I read it out loud and recorded it, I have to say I was blown away by what I read. And I had read this article before and it didn't have the same impact on me that it did the last time I read it. And so I listened to what I had read out loud and then listened to it again. And I listened to it many times before I put the video up on YouTube. But I couldn't stop thinking about what the master wrote about the impact of Maitreya's approach and eventual coming out into the open the way that he is in the process of doing now. Now, the other thing is, I don't normally discuss what is read aloud coming from his master, because I feel like he's done the job perfectly in terms of articulating his thoughts. I don't think I can really add to it, anything other than that. But I wanted to do something a little differently, because I kind of went back and forth about whether to do this or not. And I really do want to highlight and talk about some things about this, not draw conclusions about it, not get you to draw conclusions about it. I don't want to do that at all. I want to kind of keep it open, as best we can, have kind of an open mind about what he said, but, kind of highlight, underline some things that he said that hopefully will inspire you to go to the Share International website and read this particular article, because if you're interested in this information, if you're interested in the impact that Maitreya is going to have or how he's going to have it, then it would make sense to you to go read it. And, I am always asked by people, how is Maitreya going to inspire the change? Or what makes you think that, is another way people ask, what makes you think that the people will respond to his message? And I've always tried to explain it as best I can, but this article explains it better than anything I've ever read. So that's why I wanted to go back and look at it again. Like I said, not to draw conclusions, not to even when I'm highlighting to say that that's what you need to focus on. We're just talking about it, okay? Now, the first paragraph, he wrote, "Deep in the consciousness of all men is the awareness of the divine. With some, it is nearer the surface of the mind. In others, it lies relatively unknown and undiscovered until some major event or stimulus awakens it from sleep. Thus, some affirm readily the existence of the divine, while many reject often heatedly the reality of all that cannot be known, measured, and understood by their five senses." Now, there's a lot to what he just said in this. One thing I do want to point out is the first sentence, "Deep in the consciousness of all men is the awareness of the divine." Now, the divinity, as most people know it to be, I don't think is really true. Now, let me explain, okay? The divinity that the churches have laid out there for all of us paints a picture that God and Jesus are up in heaven, or whatever the other deity you think to be the case, right? But I'm living in a Christian country, so let's just use this as an example. And then there's the rest of us, right? And then somewhere in the middle is the churches and the priests and the pastors and the evangelists or whatever, right? And they've somehow gotten it righter than the other ones, than everyone else. They seem to know a little bit more about this, about divinity than perhaps the ordinary person. So it would be, they always put out there to the people that, you got to come to us, you got to come to church every Sunday and perhaps on Wednesday. And we got a couple things going on Saturday you need to come to. And then, and people come and they devote their time to the church. And by doing that, they think that they are actually devoting their time to God, because it's perpetuated like that, really. And then, of course, nothing in life is free. Then you got to tithe 10%. And I've been to enough churches to know that what they postulate as their, belief in terms of recouping, getting money, is when you give to them, you're actually giving to God. And I've even heard pastors and preachers go so far as say, if you give me money, well, then the blessings are going to flow to you, and that kind of thing. So people, oh, wow. So if I give to you, I give to God and Jesus, and therefore then my life is going to be a lot better. Well, is there any truth to that or not? I don't think so. But what I do want to say about this is the picture that Maitreya is going to paint about the truth about divinity is far different than what the churches have been postulating and teaching over the centuries. He's going to be talking about a divinity as it really is, that's free for everyone, that's there for all of us, that we all share that divinity, that we don't need to go to it through an intermediary in order to be more divine or to learn about divinity. It's all within our hearts, just like he said. And then, of course, the master went so far as to say to point out the obvious, that there are people who are not aware of their own divinity, right? This says, with some, it's nearer to the surface of the mind, while others it is relatively unknown and undiscovered, right? So even those people who we might see and think upon first meeting them that they know nothing about divinity, or they're not divine, or they're not good people even, Maitreya would disagree with you, and he would say that the truth of the matter is, even within their hearts is the same divinity that's within your heart, Jesus' heart, Maitreya's heart, the Buddha's heart. And it's the connection that really allows us all to, when we see the truth, that we are all one. Now, what is the major event or stimulus that would waken it from sleep? Well, individually, of course, from time to time, that does happen. People have the quote-unquote road to Damascus experience, just like Paul did in the Bible, right? Where they're perhaps self-absorbed or violent, or whatever their initial persona would be, and then they have this major catastrophe or event in their life, and then it changes them and the fundamental level, and now they're more divine, or more manifesting their divinity more. Perhaps they're softer or more spiritual, maybe, even, or something like that. That's what I think he's going to talk about. But what will be the road to Damascus experience for the whole world, right? Because this is really what he's talking about. Well, Maitreya talked about it many times. He talks about the global stock market crash that's really happening now. It doesn't appear like it is, and I'm going to explain some things why I think it's actually coming to an absolute climax at this moment in time. But that will be what brings all of humanity to its senses, because commercialization, market forces, capitalization, whatever you want to refer to it as, is really what's perpetuating the lie that we're separate, that we need to compete with one another, that we need to be afraid of one another, that we need to do everything we can to get ahead and survive and not trust the other person. That's the lie. That's the danger in commercialization. But really what I think it's getting ready to collapse is, for one thing, it's truly like what Maitreya said. The markets are totally blind. They don't follow any kind of logic. So you can have a catastrophe or a major world event that normally would cause the markets to go down. The markets go up to even higher highs. And it's happened over the years that you can really see when you would normally think that the markets were going to get rattled and go down, they actually go up. So they're not following what's going on in mainstream life. Also, the profits that those traders are making and so forth are going to them, of course, and it's not helping the people, right? And the people's livelihood is sometimes drying up. Their way of life, their quality of life is diminishing compared to what it was years ago, but yet the very, very few are getting richer and richer and richer because of it. You see? So that's one, I think, reason why it's getting ready to collapse. Two is what we're seeing even with the workforce now. And this kind of leads to the next paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to read the next paragraph and then I want to talk about that second part of it. Today, many are sensing more and more the presence of Maitreya, whose energies penetrate all the planes of consciousness. They may not know the name or even of his existence, but responding to his energies are aware of a new and spiritual climate in the world. They find it difficult to explain, but know with growing certainty that they live in the aura of the divine, and that all will be well. They know, too, that they are not alone, that their prayers are being answered, and that something wonderful and sacred is happening on planet Earth. They sense that the stressful and dangerous conditions of today are nearing their end, that beyond the fear and failures of our time is a new and better world to be fashioned, and it will be so fashioned. So if you look at a lot of things, if you look at people who are sensing perhaps that they're, the Maitreyas in the world not really being able to articulate it, are searching for the Antichrist, even though the Antichrist has already come and gone. And they devote their entire life to revealing the Antichrist, even though, and in their own way, I think they are sensing that the teacher is already back. That's one thing. Two, is in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the marches around the world. More and more people are marching for what they see is right, whether it's justice, racial justice, climate justice, peace, whatever it happens to be. More and more groups are coming together for change. That's the other thing, which he also kind of talks about it in another paragraph here in this article. But when it comes to what's going on today, that's a really popular thing that people have been talking about is what? It's the workforce shortage, right? People aren't wanting to work. And our leaders, political leaders, our corporations, don't have an answer, don't have a solution to what's going on. I know that to be a fact from the company that I work for. They're having a hard time getting people to show up to go to work. And people blame the government. People say, oh, it's the stimmies, it's the this, it's the that. But this was coming on for a while, really. And what I think it boils down to is people are starting to wake up to the fact that the system that they were used to, that was comfortable for them, even though it wasn't providing their own needs, doesn't suit them anymore. And they're saying, I don't know what I'm going to do, right? But I am not going to continue to work for you in the way that you want me to work for you. And they've shed their fear, apparently, of losing their job, of losing their house, maybe, or whatever, because they don't see that they need it anymore. And it's rattled the system already. I think it's going to be something to where it could really cause some cataclysmic type of economic events, maybe. Because and you're starting to even see it now, I'm sure, because when you go to your local store to find your favorite product that's usually always there on the shelf for you is not there anymore, and they don't have an answer. Well, it hasn't come in. We ordered it, but it hasn't come in. And it's because wherever that is, somebody somewhere didn't want to go to work that day. Right? So I think the people finally waking up to the fact that this system that's been put in place to serve the few at the expense of them and everybody else, they don't want it anymore. And within this tension, within this problem, is Maitreya speaking on TV. You see what I'm saying? You see where it's kind of getting set up, if you know about this information, how incredible the next few months are going to lay out to be, I think. Now, meanwhile, this is another thing he said. Meanwhile, Maitreya prepares to engage with all that hinders man's progress and well-being, with all that prevents the expression of his divinity, and also with man's own fear and frailty. He will show that man has come from the highest source and is equipped with all the potential of gods. that freed from the fear which holds him in thrall, man can build a civilization worthy of his divinity and creative genius. He will show that fear and lack of trust alone condemn men to the present dangerous conditions which threaten their very existence, that the simple act of sharing will bring justice and peace to their troubled world, that men must recognize themselves as one group, sons of the one Father. Thus will he speak, thus will he call on men to change. Now that portion of what he's talking about, I believe to be the Day of Declaration. Now Maitreya speaking on TV, addressing the problems of humanity in a very simple, perhaps too simple, to where he's being picked up on anything other than just an ordinary person who's concerned about the problems of humanity. But in time, his message will start to pick up, and it will be like a snowball effect. And more interest will be in who and what he is and what he has to say, of course. And in a word, it will go viral. The what he's talking about, the need for change, the need to turn away from the edge, the need to perhaps share and bring about justice. But not really until the Day of Declaration are we really going to know who and what is talking to us. And when the Day of Declaration is going to be a day like no other days, but it's been said by Benjamin Creme's master that humanity will demand from the news media the opportunity for him to speak to everyone. And they will listen to the people, apparently, and hook up all the satellites and everything so he can come and speak to humanity, and he will. Now, at this time, what's going to make it quite extraordinary is, just like that, when he calls to humanity, it says, right, he will show that fear, where he says, he will show that men have come from the highest source, equipped with all the potential of gods, that freed from fear which holds him in thrall, man can build a civilization worthy of his divinity and creative genius. Maitreya is going to, that call to humanity is going to come when he starts to speak, but he won't utter a word out loud. We will hear his words inwardly in our own head. Now, if you are French, you will hear it in French, English in English, and so forth, Russian and Russian. You will hear it in whatever language you normally speak. So when you dream, whatever language that is that you're dreaming, well, that's the language he's probably going to speak to, because that's the one that you're most familiar with. That's the one that will leave the least amount of distortion in your mind about what he has to say. So we'll all see it and hear it from that perspective. And then he's going to give us all the same visions about life, what life will look like on planet Earth, or we don't accept the principle of sharing. We'll probably feel what it's like to experience the loss of our own planetary home in a very real way. We'll probably feel it in our own heart. We'll also, at this, not long after that, maybe, I'm just guessing, we will see from his perspective what it will be like on Earth if we do accept the principle of sharing. How wonderful that will be for everyone. How the whole world will change. How our environment will change. How the climate will respond in a positive way because of that, even, and life on Earth will be easier, much easier than it's been throughout our history because of just sharing. But he will also, it's been said, talk about and discuss, and this will be the first time that he's probably does this, about where we've come and how far we've fallen into the depths of materialism that we are living in today. Because there was a time, according to the masters, early on in human history when the word to steal was not even in our vocabulary. But yet look at how far we've come to where we all steal, we all cheat, we all lie, we're all afraid of one another, we all distrust one another, we all do everything we can to compete against one another. That's the life that like life is like on planet Earth. And I don't need to tell you, you already know, just as everybody else knows, right? But imagine what life would be like when all that is gone, when we truly see each other as divine, we see ourselves as divine. This is where this fits into this. Now, the last two paragraphs I think are the most important, actually. The first one talks about really, I think, the stage that we're at right now. And this is what it says. How will men respond? How will they find Maitreya's analysis of their position and problems? Maitreya is not alone in urging change and reform in the world. Many wise men and women are responding to his thoughts and energy and propound widely his ideas. Slowly but surely, these ideas are taking root and educating large masses of hitherto uninterested and uncommitted people. Thus is Maitreya's way being prepared. And this can be seen, I think, in the social fields, people marching for ecological justice, people marching for racial justice, people marching for peace, and the amount of people that have been doing that over the last few years and decades and so forth, it just keeps getting more and more people. They're responding to this energy. They're waking up to the problems of the world, which is what Maitreya's energy is doing for them. That divinity, and this next paragraph ties the whole article together. I do think it's actually the most important paragraph because and you'll see what I'm talking about. But that last paragraph I read, where he talks about slowly but surely these ideas are taking root and educating large masses of hitherto uninterested and uncommitted people. Even when you look at the political fields, more people are interested in politics than ever before. They talk about politics like it's a sporting event. You know what I mean? Now, I do think right and left politics are bringing out the worst in all of us, but it is showing that there's more interest in their own life than they ever had, and for change even, whether it's true change or change for themselves or whatever like that. But it is change in some way, shape, or form. And I think that they're responding even to the energies of Maitreya. Even, like I said, it's creating a very much of a division. They're responding in that way. The right is looking for freedom. The left is looking for justice. Little did they know that the answer to both their fight is the principle of sharing. Sharing will bring about the justice, which will bring about the peace, which is freedom. You need the principle of sharing. It's that simple, And Maitreya will address that, and people will start to see it. And how will they see it? Why? This is why I think this is the most important paragraph. And I want to just read it, and I'm going to let you kind of sit on it and think about it after I read this, if you've listened to this article, this video this far. Even so, how can Maitreya touch the hearts of the millions needed to change direction? The answer lies in the potency of his energies. Never before has a teacher of such power stood before the world. With each word uttered, his beneficent force flows from heart to heart. Useless and unnecessary is argument and debate. His truth calls forth the truth in the heart of the listener, and in the crucible of their shared divinity is recognized as truth itself. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.